I'll do. Got quite a concerning story here today. I'm not really going to beat around the bush that much with it. Basically, I'll just do the quick spiel first, then we'll crack on with what I'm saying. I'll put the link to the article below. Please visit the site. It helps them with their advertiser revenue, all that good stuff. Unfortunately, sorry. That was a subconscious Freudian slip. Who knows? But I don't receive any money for sending people to these sites. I'm not sponsored by them in any way, shape, or form. I just think it's good practice to help that way, because of where we're getting this material from, to reward them obviously with a bit of traffic, even if it's just going on the page, let it load up, then leave. Anyway, on with the story. Get my tongue back. German home prices tumble 10% amid property rout. Residential property prices in Germany continued their fall, dropping 10.2% in the third quarter from a year earlier. A further grim sign for the nation's real estate sector, data show today. That's bad. However, it doesn't mean it was 10% of that original price. It's 10% after whatever it had fallen from previously. So it's just that 10% is smaller than obviously what 10% would have been previous. I haven't read this article, and just a quick look to see how long it was, and then back down, and then back to the top again. I do think that this is showing a deep sign. I've mentioned this in another video, I think, where I was talking about Germany bringing back conscription a little bit. But basically, Germany's in a really bad place at the moment. With Brexit happening, they've had to increase costs on the losses caused by Britain's financial contributions into the EU budget. They've also had, and I've mentioned this definitely, is that Angela Merkel obviously invited millions of people into Germany. They didn't expect as many as they got. They've had over 3 million people, I think, turn up in the country since Angela Merkel opened the borders. The overwhelming majority of those people as well are completely unemployable, from what I understand. I think it's in the region of something like 75 to 80% of all those people are almost completely unemployable. Whether that's because they are absolutely, at least from an academic point of view, what you may call, and I used, for lack of a better word, useless for or untrainable, I suppose, would probably be a better term. That's not to say that they're completely illiterate or skillless for the countries where they come from, but I think the difference in what is expected from, say, a shelf stacking level job in the UK or Germany to the equivalent job in a lot of where these people are coming from, due to the equipment that you have to handle, the interactions that you're working with, even operating, we take for granted, say, operating a till being simple, but if you've never seen a modern day electronic till, it's far more complicated than you realise. So there is that issue. Also, they may be able to speak English to a degree where they can communicate effectively, but can they read and write anything? Or in this case, I should say Germany. So that is obviously a massive. And I think a lot of the people moving to Germany, I don't even think they have a connection to Germany, apart from that there's people that they are related to who are in Germany, so they may not even be able to speak German itself. Then you obviously have the cost of Germany having to look after all of these people. That is a massive, massive, massive bill when you're talking about multiple millions of people who are providing zero to the economy in what is an aging population as well. Germany is one of the oldest populations in the world, meaning they have more retired people pretty much than anywhere else in the world. So all those retired people are having to have the pensions paid for. Germany's also had a huge has been until very recently a massive industrial power, and I do believe that their industry is on the verge of collapse. I don't want to go too deep into that right now, but basically they were heavily reliant on imports of gas from Russia, and also what was previously large nuclear power supply, and they have in recent years made some stupid political decisions. I mean, the mass immigration thing was just insane. I mean, that was almost cultural suicide, in my opinion, what they did there. Possibly going to lead to a civil war in Germany. I don't want to over-egg the pudding with that, but that is my honest belief that Germany, because they already have a very large Turkish population in Germany as well. Very, very again, I think it's about 5 or 7 million Turks or people of Turkish descent living in Germany. It's huge population. But then you also have these other people coming from other countries. But then also the got a Green Party coalition in with the Christian, I think they're called Christian Democrats, Angela Merkel's party, and they decided to shut down all the nuclear power plants. Crazy idea. You know, if you are a Green, and this is where I think the Greens are absolute liars, because if you were going to shut down any form of power, you would keep nuclear because it is the cleanest power you can, especially in countries that are tectonically stable like Germany and the UK. We don't have earthquakes, we don't have volcanoes, we don't have hurricanes. All right, we get flooding and things, but that can be very easily mitigated against. Very, very stable countries, you know, very low levels of what you would call extreme violence, like you would see in, say, Central African states, you know, where they have civil wars every other week. And they shut them down and tried to replace it with wind and solar. Germany has comparable weather to the British Isles. There just isn't the weather for it. The sun doesn't shine for long enough. Now, people talk about the efficiency of solar panels now is so many megawatts per hour of sun. It's like, yeah, that's perfect if you live in California, where 99% of the year you have blistering sunshine for almost 12 hours every single day. In a country like Germany, where you're looking at maybe a third to a half of the year is cloud cover and or night time, you don't get it, and the wind doesn't always blow. I mean, this time of year we're getting a lot of wind, but even now we've got a storm going on in the UK. Windmills have to be shut down because if they run, the motors burn out, they catch fire. So even when it's windy, you can't necessarily. The weather just isn't right in our countries for these renewables. And then there's also the cost of these. I'm talking the lifetime cost of these this equipment. From when you first drill into the ground to extract the minerals and natural resources to start manufacturing this equipment. I'm not so sure about with solar panels, but with wind farms, from the very inception of the item to when it gets decommissioned, because it's come to its end of life cycle, there is a net loss of power over the entire life. So that means that if you was to 100% run the system, so say charging the equipment, you know, the mining equipment that digs it through renewables, you know, like say they're all battery powered and you're using windmills to charge their batteries, you know, and say all the smelting process, you know, all the shipping containers, etc., 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 right up until the thing gets torn down and gets to be replaced with another. You would have a dwindling supply of windmills because you wouldn't be able to keep up with the demand of the power required for the whole process. So it's just it's a vanity project, an incredibly expensive vanity project, and Germany's finding that out the hard way right now because they just haven't got enough power. And I believe if they'd actually all the money that they'd spent on renewables after they decided to shut down all the nuclear power plants crazily, they've had to start importing energy from France. And they were also using Nord Stream gas pipelines. Now, as we all know, Nord Stream 2, I believe it was, got blown up. We still aren't 100% certain who that was, although there is different evidence between the Americans or the Ukrainians doing it. I would probably say the Ukrainians have done it, as they would have more using game theory to gain from that happening, trying to drag NATO and America into a war against Russia. But I wouldn't rule out America doing it to get themselves dragged into it, because the American economy is massively propped up by the military-industrial complex there. You know, the weapons manufacturers are a huge part of the US economy. So that also can't be ruled out in my personal opinion. But anyway, the point that I was getting to, I mean, I've spent nearly 10 minutes talking about that. The point I was trying to get to was because of all these problems of energy insecurity, the German industry, as I was saying, is shrinking and has been massively shrinking over the last couple of years. And this was first started by the war in Ukraine. I think this collapse in house price, and I think it is a collapse in house prices, is a canary in the coal mine of the German economy starting to fail now. It is quite worrying because Germany is obviously the centre of the European economy. Like the European Central Bank is based upon the Bundesbank, the German central bank, so to speak. And will the German industry even be able to keep the lights on over the winter? I don't know. But anyway, I'll carry on with this story. It was the fourth consecutive quarter of decline and the biggest since Germany's statistics office began keeping records in the year 2000. So we've got 23 years of records to go off. Not a lot. but not insignificant either. The drop comes amid the biggest property crisis in decades in Germany, Europe's largest economy. Until 2022, there was a speculative price bubble in Germany, one of the biggest in the last 50 years. That was probably artificially spiked by handouts of money over the lockdown period, and people having large amounts of savings once lockdown was lifted, of being able to go out and spend money. In my opinion, very unwisely. I don't think you need to be an economist to understand that when you shut down a global markets, it's going to have a long-term knock-on effect, because supply chains start to break down, and supply chains are very difficult to get going again. It took us 1,000 years to get to the West to where it was, of going through multiple gradually growing stages, building upon what was already there. It's like you don't build a roof first, you build the house, you build the you start with the foundations, even for that, you start with the site surveying before you even build anything, and that's in effect what you have to do to get supply chains going. You don't just build a factory and a mine and all the supply chains and everything all in one go. Well, you can do, but that's only if you've got a lot of funding behind you already in an already functioning industrial society. But you can't just build a whole infrastructure all at once and just expect it just to start suddenly work. It just doesn't happen like that. And when you shut these things down and they break down, they're gone. It's like bulldozing a school. It's like you can't just say, well, go on kids, go to school, when there's no school there. Prices have been falling ever since the bubble has burst, he added. For years, the property sector in Germany and elsewhere in Europe boomed as interest rates were low and demand strong. Well, yeah, there's that as well. The interest rates were historically low. But again, this is another problem that we've had, is all this quantitative easing that's been going on for decades now. For those of you who don't know what that is, what that means is just putting the money printer on and just printing out money. Printing out money. The trouble is, though, is if you give everybody, let's say, £1,000, so everybody's £1,000 richer instantly, prices will go up, because everybody will be going in trying to buy things, and all the shopkeepers and that will start putting the prices up, and it's basic supply and demand. And that's now, with a lot of quantitative easing, though, most of that money wasn't coming to the plebs like me and you. I imagine if you're watching this, it was going to big business. So a lot of it wasn't even being seen. It was just going on. It was just moving around on spreadsheets, so to speak. Which is why we've ended up with a situation where the world's wealthiest have sailed ahead so far. But it's been artificial growth. It hasn't been natural growth. And we're going to start seeing, as interest rates are going up, we're starting to see a lot of business companies go belly up now. And they were what you've probably heard the term zombie companies. We've seen this a lot with media. What was it called again? Huffington Post, being a very famous one, has gone belly up. That was being propped up by DEI investments from companies like BlackRock, while interest rates were low, because they weren't getting the traffic. But now interest rates are going up, and these companies are starting to hold back on their investments and want to actually invest in companies that genuinely do produce wealth. These zombie companies are starting to collapse now, so we'll start seeing that in Germany as well. And this has a sort of snowball effect, because if you've got, say, a company like Huffington Post, they might have, say, I don't know, 2,000 employees. 1,000 of those every day might go out into the local economy in the area and buy a coffee or a cup of tea, or eat in that restaurant, or ride the buses, things. So if they suddenly lose money, you've suddenly lost that stimulus into the local economy, which then starts to have a knock-on effect on top of that. And this is what we could be seeing in Germany. Prices have been falling ever since the bubble has burst, he added. For years, the property sector in Germany and elsewhere in Europe boomed as interest rates were low and demand strong. But a sharp rise in cost has put an end to the run, tipping developers into insolvency as bank financing dries up and deals freeze. The decline of single and two-family homes in major cities was especially pronounced in the third quarter, dropping 12.7%, while apartment prices fell 9.1%. Well, Germany does have as I say, it's an ageing population, so the thing is, as each generation grows older, that means the generation underneath, because they're having less kids, is smaller than the previous generation. So that means they're going to have less kids, which means there's even smaller people. I think it's South Korea. I think when the current generation now that is alive around my sort of age, so between around 20 to 40 sort of, that's quite a big generation. But when those people are grandparents, there's estimated to be about 4 grandchildren for every current 100 people who are in sort of what you would call the fertile years of life at the moment. Four grandchildren. That is not sustainable. That is actual cultural suicide, and they're not alone. Like, this is happening in all across the world. And for people who say, "Oh well, we're going to end up, say, with the Middle East or Africans or South America running the world," it's not. It's happening everywhere. You can count on one hand the amount of countries in the world that actually have are projected to maintain growing populations. And this includes the population declines. By the way, includes countries like Somalia as well. Every country that's industrialising or engaging in any form of industrialisation, they're projected for the populations to start crashing in the next 100 years. If things don't change, this is going to be completely and utterly unsustainable. This mass migration will end at some point, because people who have moved to Western countries are maintaining very, very strong links home. And as they start to see their families back home struggle because there aren't enough young people being able to pay for things like pensions or maintain infrastructure, they'll go home and care for the families. And that is to be expected. That would be normal. I would do the same. Who wouldn't? I don't know. I mean, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent throughout this video. I know it's the article itself was a very basic one, just talking about house prices, but I do think it's definitely worrying. If Germany goes belly up, the EU basically goes belly up. But this is what people like me were warning about for years, who wanted Brexit and to separate ourselves from the EU, because it absolutely is unsustainable. The whole system, it's the Tower of Babel, isn't it? That's what that fable's about. These old stories, they've got plenty of wisdom within them. And you've got to just know how to listen to them, in my opinion. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. I've waffled on more than enough in this video. I hope you found that informative in some way and possibly learned something. If you have found that in any way insightful or interesting, or you've enjoyed it, please like, subscribe and put a comment below. Thanks for now. I'll post another video later. Take care.